Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I could ask you to take your seats, we'll get started. Excuse me. Thank you for coming, and welcome to the first session today. As you can see, it's session 1A, 2A. Will run from 10 till 11:45 on the future skills, a view from industry. And we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of change in market trends, technology, and industry practices. Just as a means of introduction, my name is David Green, and I'm the World Skills Liaison Planning Manager with Fluke Corporation, but today I'm in a neutral role as going to sort of act as a host for this event and introduce our various speakers. The speakers today are all global industry partners of World Skills International, and they're shown there. The speakers will be Autodesk, Cisco, Festo, Fluke, 3M, Siemens, Lincoln Electric, and Saint-Gobain. Basically, the presentations are structured to cover these skill sectors, and not necessarily in a specifically targeting a sector in any order, because a lot of the things that will be talked about today will go across sectors. In addition, as you know from the overview of this session, they were looking at themes such as digital media, e-learning and online communications, the whole concept of globalization, portability and mobility of skills, and traditional skills and how they will move and look at in the future. The format will basically run with all the presentations first with a short Q&A. The idea is to be able to have clarifying questions for each of the sessions. If there are any bigger issues that we could address as a panel later, then we'll take note of those and deal with them after. About 10 minutes each for the presentations. We'll run from 10 till 11:45 with a short break. If you can do 5 to 10 minutes, because we are a little tight on time, even though it's a double session. Panel discussion at the end. Everyone will basically come up and a chance to address any questions. If you do have questions during the session, please use the mics on the side. Although with a smaller group it may not be needed, it's helpful. Excuse me. In addition, if you want to write a question out, there are some notebooks on your seats which you could write the question, and basically if you can pass it to us, we'll then take note of it and deal with it at a later time if you don't want to use the mic. So our first presentation is from Saint-Gobain, and I'll just bring that up, and Patrick Atkinson.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Atkinson. I'm Global Marketing Manager with Saint-Gobain. I'm going to address some of the issues we have within the construction technology area this morning. Firstly, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Saint-Gobain and who we are, some of the challenges we have in the industry, what's happening today, and some of the training developments we have going on. Brief introduction to who Saint-Gobain are. We're an old company. We were established in 1665, and we are the global leader in building materials and building distribution. Broad range of products, which I'm not going to go into. We've about 200,000 employees, and I say mainly in the construction industry. The main driver that we're working on at the moment is to try and replace more traditional materials that are less sustainable with lighter weight building systems, and we see the biggest opportunity today within the emerging markets. The lightweight building systems we have, and not just us, but other companies in our industry, are more sustainable and provide speed, comfort, and considerable financial benefits to those who use them. Generally across the skills, and the skills you'll see in the skills areas outside, there's a broad range of them which you see on the left-hand side, which are familiar to most of us and help us out every day in our own homes and office buildings that we work in. Obviously the one that we're concerned with is the plastering and drywall systems. And our driving agenda is to change this sort of landscape that we see here, which is typical of Mumbai, to what's been happening in the recent past. So we end up with an environment that provides a much more comfortable living environment and provides a greater standard of living for the inhabitants. Generally speaking, the construction industry challenges we have today are twofold. Across the mature markets, we have done some research on this, and not just our company, but the industry generally. And some of the feedback we get from people, young people in the countries that we operate in, is that because the business is cyclical, it's not attractive, and there's low growth generally in the mature markets. It's not considered particularly cool to be in the construction industry. They see it as being hard and dirty work, and can be dangerous, is the view that they have. In the emerging markets, our challenges are a little bit different. We don't today have enough skilled labour to meet the demand for the output that we need. It's primarily due to the fact that there are, due to the state of development of a lot of the countries, we don't have enough government-supported training programs. There's a lack of knowledge generally across those markets of the opportunities that are available within the construction industry. And there's a lack of recognition of construction skills, and mainly due to the fact that there's poor regulation in those countries. If I give you just a little example of what I'm talking about, there's two main things that we're working on. The first one is trying to move the surplus skills that we have in the mature markets into emerging markets. And this one example I'm going to give here it's a project called the One World Project in Mumbai. It's the biggest, largest residential development in the world today. It's a $340 million development, and at very top end, so apartments in there will cost somewhere between 1.3 and 8.6 million euros each. So very high end in the center of Mumbai. When we talked to the developer, a developer called Loda, we said to them, let's make this building more comfortable and more sustainable. They said, that's fine, but who's going to install drywall systems in this country? And we looked at it, and there actually wasn't enough skills in the country. So what we've had to do is bring those skills in from Europe. We went to a couple of large companies who are specializing in this area. So what they're doing now is they're training on site local people to install drywall correctly. The problem with that is that, yes, they'll be trained, but there'll be no certification for those people. So they won't necessarily be entitled to a higher wage in the future. So the value add that they could be getting isn't happening because we as a business and other people in my industry, they can't nearly train enough people themselves to solve the market problems. And that's one of the problems we have. The second thing, thanks David. So the second challenge we're working on is attracting young people into our industry. So we're continually working on investing in modern training programs and facilities. We're trying to manage our employer brands to make us as more attractive. We're using new media to communicate and trying to make it cool to be part of building something great across those countries. We're using some tools to recognize the work of contractors. We're doing a lot of sharing of knowledge and forums, and we're trying to get it on the agenda of the schools. And some of the ways we're doing that is by providing better facilities and faster training. So we currently have about 150 training academies globally. Only 10% of those are in the emerging markets at the moment, so it's not enough. And I've presented here some of the series of electronic things we're using to get young people engaged in a medium that they're more familiar with. So we've developed a number of apps. We've got a number of important tools that I search, I learn, I know, and we're using, obviously, the guy in the center is a virtual reality guy. And we're looking at using virtual reality as to make it a part of our training program, particularly in the emerging markets. Any of you that were at Mike Holmes' talk yesterday, he talked about young people using electronics as a form of entertainment. And this is basically used in a medium across the markets that will be attractive to those younger people. So today, we have some areas where we've got government-backed training schemes, and that's obviously in Central Europe, and that happens a lot, and we're very grateful for that, and it's been happening for a number of years. But the areas that we've worked on for the last 5 years are the ones highlighted here, and there are very few government-backed training programs, and through the work of World Skills, we're getting some traction there. And as we move forward, these are the areas that will be the focus on for the next 5. So the construction industry is growing at a huge rate, and the skill training isn't providing us with enough resource, and that's why we're having to import it in. We're improving our employer brand, so across all the countries that we're in, we're encouraging our own companies with programs to attract people into the industry. We're using the heroes that we have within the business and promoting that, and promoting the value of education, so that a certified training program actually commands a greater rate of pay every day. The young man on the right won the gold in London 2 years ago, so we have him as a kind of an ambassador for us in the Middle East, where he's promoting good skills in there, and he's been very effective, and we'll do more of that in the future. And we're using a range of social media in order to communicate with young people, and which has been, it's a slow process, but it's effective, and it's probably the most effective way we can do that today. So in summary, skilled people are key to the economic development in all our markets, and we all know that, and we keep saying it, and we need to act on it. We have a particular focus on emerging markets, and most of the large industry representatives are focused on the emerging markets today. We are using many new tools to attract and communicate and train young people, and that's key. But we do need additional support and cooperation from government-backed training to facilitate that growth. Thank you.
Were there any particular questions or anything you wanted to clarify or with Patrick? Again, you can make note of those, and we can capture them all later on. I'd now like to ask from Fluke Corporation, Leah Freeberg, to come up, please.
So how many people here are familiar with what Fluke Corporation does? Anyone? 3? Excellent. 4. Don't think you count. So we measure things. We measure electricity and pressure and temperature. So we're not quite scientists. Obviously we have a fair number of scientists on board. But it's very funny what happens when your entire corporation is devoted to the practice of measurement. Your aptitude changes. So we produce devices that technicians in these skills categories, manufacturing and electrical construction, use, and they use them primarily after installation for commissioning and inspection, and they use it for ongoing service and maintenance and troubleshooting. So we build the tools that measures how much, how fast, how pure. Our customers use our tools to fix things. So it's essential for us that we understand not just how to measure something, because measuring a volt hasn't really changed, but where you measure a volt, under what circumstances, by what kind of person, changes constantly. So we take it very seriously that we keep up to date with technology in the field. And what's very interesting for me, being in this environment, is that I have some of the leaders in the field, in industry, that are driving the changes in the environment that then my tools are used in. So what you'll see me doing today is referencing some of the changes that we see, some of the impact they drive, and the relationship between technology and skills. You'll also see me referencing 2 different studies in this presentation. One is from a labor management council in the US, it was published last year. And again, it's from the perspective of labor management, okay, on the electrical skills trade. And the other is a study that Fluke did, and we did it because we needed to figure out what had changed in the institutes. We were updating our education program, and so we wanted to understand both what skills were needed, skills training, and what methodology for delivering, And then we got into the gap. So I'm not going to discuss the gap too much, but it is relevant here again for understanding what's changing and what the impact is. So up top is something that we've known for a long time, right? Technology drives productivity. You add a robot onto a production line and the standard, the consistency increases, as does output. However, where you used to have 10 people manning that line, you may only have 2, their skill level is quite different, right? This second quote I find fascinating. Take a moment to read it. This is from that labor management study. This is their finding. Seniority versus experience. Because think about, what does experience mean? Experience means, can you do the job? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to do the job. Because I would argue that you need both of those things, but today they might not be in the same person. And that's a challenge for anyone, for a corporation, for a contracting firm. It's a very interesting position to be in. So here's where I especially, as we would say in America, give a shout out to Autodesk, to Cisco, to Siemens, to Festo. And I'm going to read a little story to you, because part of what I do is interview my customers all the time. So this is a small manufacturer in the US, and they produce wood grinders, right? My customers are not glamorous, very busy people. So crucial to each of their designs, because they build many different custom applications for their clients, are the AutoCAD drawings that guide the panel builder in creating the electrical and electronic components. This controls engineer creates the drawings himself, oversees the production of the mobile and stationary components, and the on-site installation. This is one person with that many different kinds of skills. All right, so at the beginning, he's using Tom's products. At the end, he's using mine products. All right? He says, I'm responsible for the electrical side, from design and specification to programming and troubleshooting. I also need to ensure that each machine works with whatever other equipment is already on site. All the modules on the network are managed by the master controller, which is the primary troubleshooter. However, it can't tell the technicians exactly where the problems are. All right? So you have technology coming in, just like that robot, doing more of the work. However, unless the people on site understand how something is built, how can they fix it when it doesn't work just right? This is the outcome of the study that Fluke did. Because again, I need to understand what kind of tool, what kind of test and measurement tool am I building for what kind of person to use in what kind of environment. And what we have done as a company is make our tools progressively easier to do. There's more calculation inside the tool and more data, because data is needed throughout the organization, wherever it is used. But what you'll notice here is the gap, right? What we see is that when people graduate, if they've not been in a work-study program, they do not possess the experience, remember, seniority and experience, required to enter the field. And then when you look at what does that experience look like, basic knowledge versus hands-on time. So they're very confident right when they graduate, but then when you look at the working professional, only half of them say their technology-based skills are enough to get the job done. Technology-based skills. All right? So here are some of the reasons we see behind the skills imbalance. And again, I'm only talking about the fields that I have knowledge of. Our studies, our Labour Council studies, manufacturing, electrical construction, right? So obviously we have the retirement issue. We have the pace of new technology and older technicians who struggle to keep pace of it because there's not enough continuing education in this elective, right? As was referenced earlier, most of the training is done by manufacturers for specific projects. It's not universal, there's not an ongoing continuing education program. There's very little mentorship because the teams are now so much smaller and so driven by productivity, there's not the time to buddy up for the senior to train the junior. And then the worldwide macroeconomic instability has definitely dampened. And I see this, I'm talking to member countries here, I see this all over. So these things we're aware of. With those kind of markets, the answer usually is more automation, because you have to get the job done. You don't have the people to do it, you apply more automation. That puts a premium on those skills that can run the automation. So you have a more highly skilled workforce that become increasingly valuable. However, we also see a negative effect in that, where in some cases in a manufacturing plant, one person has the controls level knowledge and hires a lower skilled base of people to go out and collect the data and bring it back. Or with BIM construction, for example, on site, you're assembling, and if you're only assembling pre-manufactured components, do you know how they go together? Now, a wire puller isn't necessarily going to know how to troubleshoot a panel, but are they going to have the path to become an inspector, a commissioner, a troubleshooter? What is their path for progression? So we have to be more cognizant. You know, this is not new, right? We've been introducing technology since the Industrial Revolution. So what we have to know is what's different now. One of the things that was mentioned earlier, right, the mobile platform, cloud platforms, everyone has a laptop on site. Each new class is better at using that than the elders, but if we don't merge those two things, seniority and experience, then we're not only not training the next generation, but we're not getting the job done as well as we could and should. Right, this mentorship that I referenced goes both ways. Goes both ways. This idea of sharing between skill levels and roles and field and office is essential. As long as we have the technology and the tools to be gathering data in the field and bringing it back to the office, we need to be communicating between those teams as well. And then when you look at from the perspective of online learning, and again, I have some of the masters of that here. Online learning gives students the opportunity to practice as much as they need to online. But their teacher must change from someone who grades homework to someone who answers questions, provides field examples of relevancy, and provides more hands-on challenges in the classroom, sets things up on purpose to fail, so the student must try to figure it out. All right? So with that, I'll leave you with a glimpse of what fluke zone training looks like, but again, I will leave that to the people to come. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, data from, yes.
It's developed worlds, but it really depends on the economic environment, how those things may change, right? So how all the factors that are there, there's a different mix depending on the economic environment that you find. It's a good question.
Thank you, Leah.
Yeah?
Now I'd like to, having talked about simulation and online learning and so on, I'd like to now invite Jackie Barker to come and speak, who's from Cisco, who of course have know something about that.
Great, thanks. Good morning. I was very intrigued when I was asked to speak a little bit at this presentation because I saw the title, Discover Skills Unlimited. That's got to make you feel creative. If it doesn't, you should shake yourself up. This is a really interesting opportunity we have today. Think about when you were in school. You probably sat down exactly like you are now, facing the front. There was a chalkboard up front. Your desk may have had something over top, and you had your stuff underneath, and you shoved it all in. How many of you had computers in your class? How many of you carried around smartphones, had Facebook, constantly were able to talk to your pals without your teacher knowing? Very few of you. How many of you had online baking, used PayPal, registered for conferences online, registered for the food you wanted online, bought your airline tickets? I didn't. Imagine what it's going to be like in 5 years. In 1 year. We are now in a time that is the Internet of Things. Everything is starting to be connected. It's a little scary, but it's also really exciting. What opportunities are there? There used to be a show in the United States called The Jetsons. I don't know if it went over all around the world, but it was, you had robots, and the robots spun around and they gave you food. That's actually happening today. You were able to take your food and create a shopping list just by using the code on the back of it, and a shopping list would generate, and it would go, and a request to the store would automatically come up, and then the food would be delivered to you. Wow, that's happening today. Today, your students and the people you work with have to think innovatively. They have to think differently, whether they're in the construction field and they're trying to figure out, how do I use smart products for a green and sustainable environment? How does that product hook to something else? Well, the Internet of Things really is kind of at that next stage. It's talking about connectivity. So when we first started, it was all about digitizing information. Yeah, that was pretty good. We had emails and web browsers and DOS, and I remember doing my computer when I first got it. I had a Mac in college, and it was so cool, and I had the disk I had to put in. Wow. I'd like to think it wasn't that long ago, but it was about 20 years ago, but it's happening. Then you started hearing about different companies that were grocery stores and other stores online. That was the networked economy. We talked about that a lot. That's when I first started working with Cisco. Wow, we're powered by the network. Then we have this thing called immersive experiences now, and I don't know about you, the best time for me right now is when I'm on a plane and I have no phones, I have no email, I have no Facebook, I don't have text messages, I don't have to talk to anybody. I pull out my book, and I'm still one of those old-fashioned types with the paper, and I pull my book out and I read. It's the best time, but we're in this immersive experience time right now, where you have social mobility, you have everything available to you in just one flick. That's the life your students are growing up in. How does that differ from the lives you and I had when we didn't have any of that stuff? How do we relate to somebody who can do 10 things at once? They can do their homework, they're listening, they're doing all kinds of different things. How do we need to change as instructors? Well, and now when we think about the Internet of Everything, there's some predictions that people will have information on their head that you can track. Your health, your blood pressure, your weight. If there's a problem, it'll automatically go to a healthcare facility. Huh. There will be buildings that when you walk in, it'll automatically adjust because you have something on your person that'll adjust the lights. It will adjust the heat. It will monitor your body temperatures to tell you what it is, what they need to have. Huh. Wow. So what does that mean as we're thinking about the skills that are needed? Well, when you look at the changes that are happening, and these are happening quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker throughout the time. It's not slowing down. Not at all. It's speeding up. So as we're working with people and we're thinking about the skills, we have to think about, how do we prepare people for constant change? I don't know about you, but I don't like change. Me either. He's old. He doesn't like change either. Me too. Nobody likes change. Somebody once said, oh, I've got this really innovative idea. Well, innovation may be innovation to you, but it's change to everybody else. So how do you do that? But when you think about the technology and the different transitions that are available, there's mobility, there's cloud. Cloud is that big thing that everybody puts stuff in. We're still learning about it. There's all kinds of different applications. You have applications on your phone that can tell you where to go. You see Google phones that have the maps that produce right in front of your very eyes. I'd probably fall a lot. I don't know that I could handle that. You have the Internet of Things. And then the other thing that's really important, and you heard it from some of these people today, and you're going to hear from 3M about safety, data. How do we use data in our daily life? How do we use that as a skill? How do we get smarter about the decisions we make based upon what we see? So when you think about the skills that are needed, you need people who are going to be able to adapt, who are going to be able to process information. And this is not only in IT jobs. This is going to be in every job. Everybody who's sitting in here today, this is what we need. This is how we're going to need to react. So when you think about the people, they're connecting in relevant ways. I met Alan last night. Alan is an architect. His business is going to change because he's going to understand the different materials that are needed. He's going to understand the design. He's going to need to understand the implications from a green and sustainable workforce. He's going to need to know that people are not going to be working in a traditional office. They'll probably be sitting at home with their feet up, with their computers on their lap. Or maybe not even a computer on their lap. Maybe they're just going to be sitting and they think about it and they go. They blink their eyes and then it happens. Anything's possible. How do you create that innovation in all of the people that are there? There are some very specific things that I do want to highlight that are going to change. Operational efficiencies, welding. We're going to hear from Lincoln Electric a little bit later on today. He's going to talk about some efficiencies that welders are going to need to take. We heard about building and Mumbai and some of the different areas. How do you get more efficient in getting the information and the materials to Mumbai, that traffic? What about smarter business processes? Are we going to be able to work one-on-one anymore? Face-to-face? Probably not. We may sometimes. But there's going to be technologies that allow you to interact with people that you've never been able to interact to by looking at a video screen, by Skyping. Skype, who knew how to do Skype? My dad knows how to do Skype now. He never knew how to do Skype. But business processes are going to change in order to get more effective and more productive. Economic growth is going to change. The emerging markets we're seeing are growing. There's still a lot of people who make less than $2 a day, but it's growing. Safety and security, you can see, are changing. Video screens on computers at school systems. Workforce optimization, we're going to know exactly how much water is going in a particular area, and we can reroute that water. Or traffic systems. You don't want to sit in traffic anymore, do you? Well, we have an opportunity with technology to change that because you can be rerouted based upon the traffic situations. And then there's that regulatory compliance piece that's going to allow us to figure out how do you handle all of this. Now, as you think about all of this, hopefully you're not scared going, what am I going to do? Well, you're going to change and you're going to adapt. And you're going to teach your students to be innovative. You're going to use the technology and try it out. There are lots of opportunities across all the different skills, regardless of what it is. And you can see some of those on the screen. I'm not going to go into all of those details. But every single industry, every single skill we have on the floor at World Skills will be affected by technology changes. Every person will need to know about technology. So, I wish you well on this journey about preparing your youth. Cisco does have several different training programs, as I'm sure you'll hear other people talk about. But discover your skills, because they're definitely unlimited, and we definitely have an opportunity to do more than we ever have before. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Are there any specific questions or clarifying questions you'd like to ask of Jackie? Or if you'd like to make a note or for later on, we'll have the opportunity to deal with it with the panel. Okay? Thanks very much, Jackie. Jackie has to rush off to another session to give as well, so thank you. I'd like to now invite Rich Miles from 3M Corporation to come up. And a number of people have mentioned workplace safety, and so it's a perfect opportunity to perhaps cover that topic now.
Thanks, David. Yeah, let me introduce myself first of all. First of all, it's good to be here today. Rich Miles, I'm Business Development Manager for 3M. 3M is a large multinational company, very diverse in its product line, 60,000 products being sold on a global basis. You know, those products can be from post-it notes that most people know about, to military ballistic helmets, to face masks, to sandpaper, to a variety of other things in the oil and gas industry, as an example. Glass bubbles. Who would think that, you know, we can make a business selling glass bubbles, but we can. The subject of what I'm going to be talking about for the next 10 minutes is enabling industry to protect their workforce through awareness and levels of protection, hazards, and on the changing nature of safety standards. Bit of a long title about what we're going to be talking about today, but I think, you know, we need to break it down to the basics. And if you look at some of those images there, you've probably seen some of these images online, and you know, they can be pretty humorous. You know, there's my brother there. You know, he's working on a construction site somewhere in APAC. You know, he's obviously hard hats are not provided to him, so you know, he's been pretty innovative. He could work for 3M actually. So he's got empty water bottles on his head, held together with a rag of some description. And there's his brother down here. He's just finished rioting. This is in Wales, where I come from. And he's put a bucket on his head just to protect himself, just in case he gets any bottles thrown his way. You know, so you know, some of these examples are, you know, I guess fun to look at, but there's I guess there's a serious element here as well. You know, and if this kind of level of protection is apparent in the general sort of workplace, then of course we have an issue. And of course, safety standards, enforcement, and provision of safety equipment differs from industry to industry and from geography to geography. Bit of a doom and gloom presentation for the start, at least, but believe me, as we get further through the presentation, it'll become clear that the future is a bit more bright. So disaster strikes, and you know, what impact does that have? Well, in France, some example from many years ago in the mining industry, there, you know, killing over 1,000 people. In Canada, you know, a munitions vessel, the Mont Blanc, you know, sunk. A tsunami resulted and killed, you know, almost 2,000 people. You know, a bit closer to home in Germany, you know, a chemical factory, you know, explodes, destroys the plant, but also, you know, the nearby village, you know, killing 1,500 people. You know, this is, you know, terrible stuff. Now, how has it happened? Well, perhaps it's to do with enforcement of safety standards, but also the provision of safety equipment. In China, you know, a colliery, you know, killing, again, another 1,500 people. And for the more experienced people in the audience, you know, we can probably remember Bhopal. You know, that was horrific, still remains horrific. You know, and when that Union Carbide plant exploded, you know, almost 4,000 people died. But since then, of course, you know, it's been the aftermath of that, you know, and 15,000 people have died as a consequence of that leakage taking place. So we're talking about enforcement of safety procedures, perhaps, but also, you know, good working practices and an awareness of, if you have ill-maintained machinery, in this case, then there are pretty severe consequences. And then most recently in Bangladesh has been the subject of the news over the last month or so. You know, 1,000 people dying when that work facility collapsed and killed those people. And since then, I was reading in the paper on the way over that another 450 people have become contaminated by contaminated water. So they become ill as well. So it kind of sort of, it's very depressing, isn't it? But anyway, we move on. Okay, so things happen in the workplace. You know, fall is a major problem in a variety of industry segments. You know, and you don't have to fall from a high distance. You know, this is just 20 foot. Someone dies. You know, head and face injuries, of course. You know, operating lathes and just general traditional type equipment and machinery, respiratory. You know, you don't see the hazard necessarily, but it can have devastating consequences on your health. You know, 68,000 people die every day on a worldwide basis due to some form of injury in the workplace. So, you know, this is not a minor problem. this is a pretty severe situation. Okay, so that's the kind of sort of human cost, which is pretty dramatic and devastating. But there's also a cost to business as well, being far more commercial now. The average direct cost of an injury in the workplace, estimated around about $38,000. Okay, of every 100 workers, 4.2 workers is likely to experience an accident of some description in the workplace. Okay, that's unacceptable. Okay, so we have to bring in procedures to protect our workers, existing workers in the workplace, but also, in particular, the young workers coming through, all the guys we're seeing out there at the fair over the last few days. So, some countries are doing a pretty good job. And I've singled out a couple here. This is not exhaustive by any stretch. Lots of countries are putting in procedures and work practices to protect the workers that operate within their country. So the US, South Korea, Brazil, UK perhaps, doing a reasonably good job. Other areas, India and China, some of the big superpowers of the future, if not now, are updating their procedures. So the Factories Act is a big thing in India at the moment. The act that they have there at the moment is very much out of date. It's lost track with technological development. So we need to update that. We need to update the wording. Procedures and skills and equipment and materials have changed over the years. We just need to update that. And likewise, loads of deaths in China, particularly in the mining industry. Are they adequately protected? Well, at the moment they're not. So, as a member of the I guess the safety family, it's my job, it's our job, to make sure that people are far more aware of some of the issues that are present in the workplace, and put in place procedures and provide equipment, personal protective equipment, to protect those workers if you cannot design out the hazard at source. And I guess, I'm almost doing myself out of a job here, but what we should be fundamentally doing is designing the hazard out, so people don't need to be protected. They're already protected by the procedures in place. So, how do we get this through, to the worker? Well, it has to start at the top. You've got to get your senior management on board with this, leading by example, showing best practice. We need to empower our people. One of the plants that 3M has in the northeast of England has introduced a policy that any worker within that facility, irrespective of level, can approach anybody within that organization at whatever level, plus visitors, and just point out a safety hazard. So if someone is visiting and they haven't got adequate ear protection, they can just stop what they're doing, shut down the machine, walk up to the guy or lady and say, "Excuse me, you need to be adequately protected." And that is well thought of. People are not ridiculed for that. He's congratulated. Okay? It's a change in working procedures. Supervisory involvement, recognition of reporting the hazard, and then the availability of adequate procedures, processes, and of course equipment. Safety is everywhere, the environment is working in our favor. So, that's all the bad stuff. But looking out at the future, the future is bright, so to speak. So if you go back 10, 15 years perhaps, when people went skiing, not many people wore ski helmets or snowboard helmets. Now you go, and in a lot of countries, it's mandatory. Okay, it's become very acceptable to use PPE. It's quite cool to use safety equipment. Airbags in cars, seatbelts in cars, right? Technology transferring from one area to another. This happens to be, in the riding area. Riders now are equipped with jackets with built-in airbags. As soon as they hit the floor, airbag not explodes, because that would blow them up. Airbag ignites and their torso is protected. Cycling, of course, high visibility jackets, and likewise making PPE cool. People are more likely to wear PPE if they want to use it, if they think it makes them look good, if it's comfortable and makes them look good. Okay? In the past, it was all to do with functional safety equipment. Now it's more to do with comfort and style. So from the old to something a bit better. So it's not any one individual's responsibility, you know, it's everybody's responsibility to think about safety. Now, where can you get this information? Well, a variety of sources, online, of course, you know, World Safety Organization, the ILO, and then, of course, you know, the safety providers, 3M being just one of them. Go online, take a look at what's available to you, and just sort of, I'd just like to leave you with that last point here. It's not the individual's responsibility, it's not the manager's responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility to look after the workers of the future. Right. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. We'll just take if you'd like to grab something, I'm not sure if there's water or coffee out there, but take a quick sort of a 5-minute break, if that's all right. And we'll come back with manufacturing and engineering, and a look at some of the tools in the creative design and engineering world from other partners, and then we'll have a chance for some panel discussion. So if we could come back sort of just before 11 o'clock, that will be wonderful. Thank you.